Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Let's Study, where we apply biblical standards to everyday life. I have a special guest here with me, Shamika, my sister, and we're going to just briefly talk about grief from a faith based perspective. Can you pray for us?
Sure. God, we honor you. We praise you. We thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to gather here to talk about the topic of grief. God, I pray that you would just speak to us, allow us to be vulnerable as we navigate through this. Allow somebody to be touched by the stories and the testimonies of how you've pulled us through. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. I was just talking to Meek about how I went through a little situation recently. Well, everybody knows now that I went through a situation where I unexpectedly had to end a relationship, and now that person is still living, but I'm still grieving that relationship. Doing a lot better,
Good.
hallelujah, but I'm still grieving that relationship. So we wanted to talk about grief in all aspects because grief, number one, is universal. Everybody experiences grief, or someday will experience grief in some way. So, Shamika, can you tell us what grief is?
Grief, it's literally love, like interrupted by tragedy. And I learned to look at it that way. I was listening to this, it's going to sound crazy, but I was listening to this Mary Mary song because when I was going through grief, it was just hard for me to like define it. I'm like you have so much love for someone and you can no longer give it to that person because it was interrupted by something that was tragic.
Yeah.
So that's how I've learned to define grief.
Would you like to share a little bit about your story?
Sure. Now you want to know how I became a grief coach, or you want to know like my grief story?
If you're comfortable sharing your grief story.
Okay. I mean that leads into okay, it leads into there.
Yeah.
So, the first time I've ever experienced grief, I was 8 years old, and I lost my dad. I lost my dad to gun violence. And at the time, I was young. I didn't understand like what was going on. I just knew that my dad was gone.
Yeah.
I did have that understanding. But later on, when grief really hit home for me, was when I lost my mom at 22.
Yeah.
She had something called Chiari malformation,
Okay.
which caused her to have different brain surgeries, back surgeries, all that type of stuff, which consisted of her having to take a lot of medicine. So, lost her in January of 13. And of course, that all by itself was hard.
Yeah.
But what made it harder was getting her autopsy back. And I've never really talked about it, like this. But the autopsy said accidental overdose, and it was because of the medicine.
No.
She has switched her medicine. Her nurse has switched her medicine, matter of fact, and I guess they didn't just collide well. So she basically went to sleep, and that was that. So I got the phone call at like 2 o'clock in the morning. My grandmother, she's never calling me that early. She was just like, your mom was rushed to the hospital. And she's all like, my mom was always in and out of the hospital. So she was rushed to the hospital, but this time she didn't make it. So it was just like, I felt like my world crumbled. And I was just like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, she's always in the hospital. She always comes home. And like, we go about our day.
Yeah.
And right before that, she was in an induced coma. And she came out of that fine. So it was just no way that you were
Yeah.
telling me now.
That she's gone.
Because whose mom is gone?
Yeah.
So that started like a trickle effect. It affected everything. My relationship with God, like my relationship with people. Like I just became like kind of like I had to hold on to you out of fear of like losing you. So Yeah, 2013 was definitely life changing for me. And when I say I was angry at God, I was beefing with God. So
I've
like
said that plenty of times on here.
we wasn't beefing. I was beefing with
Yeah.
God. But it was because I'll never forget sitting there and I'm like, God, what did I do to deserve this? Like, I already have to live without my dad. And now I have to live life without my mom.
Jesus.
Like, I felt like I wasn't loved by him. So it was just
Jesus.
like, okay, I'll go this way. You stay here though. I don't want you to come with me. I'm going over here. But it was just a very dark time for me. It was depression, anxiety. I didn't want to be here. So, you know, thoughts of suicide. It was like a hard battle. And I was just like, I guess this is life from here on out. Like, it is what it is. But nobody in my household knew what I was going through.
Yeah.
I was very good at masking. Like, Meek, you good? Yeah, I'm good. Like, I would go to work because I worked overnight. I would come home and, like, I'm going to bed. Like, and that's where I would stay. Like, I would come out, eat, the normal. But as far as, like, going to church or anything like that, it was not doing that. For what? Like, I don't want anything to do with God because God doesn't he doesn't love me the way he says he does.
Wow.
So it was a very dark time. And I think this lasted for about maybe like a year and a half. And I was just like, okay, I can't keep living life like this. Like, I wasn't myself.
Yeah.
So the person you always see smiling, bubbly, just like chill, like I just wasn't her. So it was just like, you get what you get, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, like I can't continue to live like this. I have no peace. I have no joy. Like, it's just dark. So I remember just like going back to church gradually. Because I also was angry at the church. Because I was just like, I lost my mom. I grew up here and nobody like really showed up.
Wow.
So it was just like a mixture of anger at God, the church, and all of that. But I just was like, I can't live like this anymore. Like, this is not okay. Like, I don't like how I feel. I don't like who I am. So I remember going back to church gradually. And I remember just like going back, rededicating my life to Christ. And that's when like the work started. And it was just a work between me and God. And it was just like, okay, now I have to get comfortable with letting you back in because I feel like you broke my heart. So it was kind of like my trust with God was broken.
Yeah, like you had a guard up.
Yeah. So it was just like, all right, I'll let you this close, but that's it for right now. But once I fully surrendered and I was fully vulnerable with him, because I had to learn that it's okay to be vulnerable with God. It's okay to go to him and be like, listen, I don't like what you did. I'm mad at you right now.
Yeah.
Like, you hurt me.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to be the person who never hurts me.
Woo!
Like, it was a lot. And like, I was just like, okay. Started praying again, started reading my word, but was still kind of struggling. But when I say struggling, it wasn't like my rebellion wasn't like I would go out, but I wasn't like drinking or doing anything too crazy. It was more so a spiritual rebellion.
Yeah.
Like
I'm not reading my word. I'm not spending any time with you.
no.
And you know what? I dealt with that too, and I talked to you before you found out about my situation, but you knew I was like grieving because I said that I was like, I guess I'm grieving because I told you, and not to interrupt your story.
No, you're good.
But I was like, I'm assuming that this is what grief is. I didn't know that you could necessarily grieve something or somebody that was still here. But now you hearing you talk about your situation and all the emotions and different things that you experience with your emotions, I literally experienced all of that, especially with God.
Because it's just like, God, you know the desires of our hearts, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what my heart desires. And I've always desired to have my mom here. And, like, for one day, her to experience everything that she wanted to experience, her to be healed. And, like, when my mom was sick, if you ever had a chance to meet my mom, she was sick or not, she was still herself. Even on her worst days, she was still trying to show up and be who she was.
Yeah.
So she really didn't allow her sickness to get the best of her as much as she could. But for me, it was hard to maintain who I was, knowing that my heart's desire was for my mom to be healed. And I was just like, really? Like, this is what we're doing. And then I fell into comparison
Oof.
because it was just like, they treat their parents like complete crap. Like, the way they talk to them, everything, you name it, like, that's not how you honor your parents. Now, granted, every person argues with their mom. That's just a way of life. But I was just like, I never treated my mom like that. So why did you take her? Not saying that I wanted him to take somebody else's mom, because I would never want that for anybody. But I still didn't understand why my mom.
Yeah.
So I fell into comparison. And it was just like, that also made me angry. So it was just it's so much that comes with grief.
So much.
And
A
that
whole
people
lot.
don't really talk about. Because like I said before, grief is an uncomfortable topic. Like, we don't want you in our business. I don't want you to know how I'm feeling. If you ask me how I am, I'm good. Like, I'm good.
And that's all you need to know. I'm good.
Because
Because I really don't want to talk about it. I don't even want to think about it for real.
yeah, because also now I'm being forced to deal with the feelings that I'm feeling. Because you keep asking me if I'm okay.
And I don't want to feel that right now.
No. And I think that
That's deep.
not wanting to feel it in that moment is okay. But knowing that eventually you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to feel it. Because if you don't, it's going to start affecting you in other ways. Yeah.
And that brings me to the point, how can grief affect you?
Grief can affect you in a lot of different ways. Definitely your mental state, your emotional state. You'll find yourself just like really down. And it also affects your health. You'll realize, like, why do I have high blood pressure? Why do I have a headache all the time? Like, it really starts to take a toll on you. And then a lot of people don't realize how heavy it is until you go to let it go. And you're like,
This is a lot to let go.
oh, like, I feel it is a lot to let go. But once you get to the point where you're working through it and now you're letting it, you're actively letting it go, you'll find yourself like, dang, like, why am I so tired? What's going on? And it's just an emotional weight being lifted off of you that you've carried for so long.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's my spiel on that. It's a lot. Yeah.
That's good. The 5 stages of grief, can you speak about that?
Now let me see if I can remember. Because pregnancy brain is really a thing.
Oh,
Sorry.
she is so proud.
Yeah, denial is definitely a thing. Because it's just like, I can't wrap my head around the fact that I'm facing the loss of whatever it is that I lost. Like, it's really gone. Especially when it comes to death, it's no going back. Like,
And it's just like, me? Out of all people, I know for me, I don't feel like I'm invincible. But it just doesn't make sense. You just never seem like, it never seems as though those type of things could happen to you. You know?
yeah. And I feel like I understand that because you could not have told me, you couldn't have paid me $1 billion to tell me that my mom wouldn't be here. Who?
It don't make sense.
It don't. Because to lose at 22, in your 20s in general,
Yeah.
you're learning who you are.
Yeah.
And to be in the process of learning who you are and then face such a hard tragedy. Now you have to learn who you're going to be without something that was always there. So now it's just like, you want me to navigate my 20s, which is a different type of ghetto on its own.
Yeah.
And now I have to navigate it and not have the person that I will always go to for things. Like, yeah, denial is crazy. Then it's anger. But the crazy thing is, it's never in a specific order.
Never.
Like, there's plenty of times where I reached a point of acceptance that my parents are gone. And then a couple days later, I'm like, yo, I can't believe that my parents are going. Like, I'm really out
And
here
you
with no
teeter
parents.
totter.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
You go back and forth, like you experience one thing, then you experience another, and then you experience that same thing again.
And like, as you navigate through grief, the difference is when you're going through each stage, going back and forth, doesn't matter which one it is, you realize like you don't stay there as long. Like, okay, brief moment of anger, brief moment of like, yo, like, God, like, you really just like, you really just did that.
You did your big one.
But then it's just like, but even in that, God, I thank you for the memories.
Yeah. We're going to get into that.
So, yeah, so it's,
We're going to get into that.
yeah, anger, you know, bargaining. God, like, if I do this, can you?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like,
Just give me this back and I'll do
right.
this. Yeah.
If you want me to spend more time with you, like, I'll spend more time with you. Just give me what I want. And he like, girl, no. Like,
Do you think people experience all of them?
yeah. But I think it's hard to identify if you don't know.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, it's just like, oh, I'm just sad. Or I'm just angry, but that's it.
And you know, I can't recall me experiencing bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
For real. Yeah.
Really?
I can't recall. I probably did.
Mm-hmm.
But probably for a brief time.
Mm-hmm.
Or a shorter amount of time than I did others.
Yeah.
Like anger, I definitely was angry for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely denial was actually short too.
Okay.
It was very short. Well, is it? I might be experiencing denial right now. Now that I think about it.
I mean, I think that it also depends on how you define denial or how you look at it. Like, am I really going through this? Like, and then it's like, did you really just do that to me?
Like,
Not even just God, but at this point, like, this person directly, like, did you really just,
yeah.
did you really just do that?
Like, is this really real? Am I really experiencing this right now? Did I really just go through what I went through? So I guess, yeah, I can.
Yeah.
I'll say that I experienced denial.
Especially if it wasn't something you seen coming. And then the hardest thing is trying to heal with unanswered questions.
Girl, you preach it.
Depression is one of the hardest things to deal with because you kind of feel like your life stops. Like, personally, your life stops. But life around you is still going.
Still going.
So it's kind of like standing in the middle of those spinning doors, and they're constantly spinning, and you have no way out.
Okay.
And you just
Get
like
knocked out.
Exactly. So it's just like, I need to deal with this before this door slows down so I can walk through. Because your depression is anxiety, your thoughts, your guilt, because it comes with guilt. What did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? What did I do to cause this? Yeah. So all of that is a part of depression. And if you don't have any way to navigate it, you're just going to feel like your life is just like a revolving door.
Yeah.
You're just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
The 5 stages are, they are rough, they are real, and when you have no choice but to face them.
I was about to say that. Like you got to get through it.
You have to, or stay
Not
stuck.
over it. You can't get over it, under it. You have to
You have to go through it.
all of them.
Because if not, you're going to deal with something called delayed grief. So you're going to think that you're good, and then later on down the line, something's going to happen, and then you're going to be triggered. And you're going to be like, I thought I was good. No, baby, 3 months ago, you were supposed to deal with that.
You were supposed to deal with it.
And you never did. Because you didn't want to deal with the emotions and the feelings that comes with it. So now here we are. Because in order for you to be healed and for God to use you the way that he wants, you have to do all the steps. And it's so funny because Pastor Ryan told us to read Joshua 6. And I was reading it this week. And
because I was going to mention that too.
It was talking about how Joshua had to intentionally do what he was told to do, or he wouldn't have been able, they wouldn't have been able to shout that wall down. So you can't get what God is trying to give you by missing steps. One thing that I've learned is what we go through is not for us.
Girl, I be saying the same thing.
When I learned that, as I was navigating through my grief, I'm like, so, and it's like God and I have real conversations. Like ever since so what you're saying is, I have to go through this to then help somebody else be delivered from what that's a lot.
That always points me back to Jesus because his suffering was not for himself.
Because he didn't do nothing wrong.
He didn't do anything wrong. He came down and clothed himself in flesh to die for us because, number one, we couldn't do it for ourselves.
It's really not about us.
Yeah. So our suffering is not for our own. It does build us.
Yeah.
But it's for somebody else.
Yeah. And that's how, once I learned that, that's how I started pursuing to become a grief coach. And I was just like, God, like, if I can help somebody get through this dark time, like if I can be what I needed somebody to be for me as they're grieving, then allow me to be that. But I wouldn't be able to be that without going through all of this. So it's just like, it's very humbling, but it's just like, all right, God, just do what you got to do.
Do what you got to do.
Uncomfortable? Sure. Do I want to show up all the time? No. But somebody's soul is counting on us walking in what God is telling us to do. So, yeah.
I have biblical examples of grief. That's why I love the Bible, because it's very relatable.
Yeah.
And it is literally a guide, and it shows you, like, listen, the people that I use in the Bible, they dealt with the same things that you're dealing with. And even though it was a long, long time ago, and some things are a little bit different,
It's the same.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But Jesus grieving Lazarus. You got Job's grief when he lost everything, child. And you have David's mourning when he was like, the people were looking for David.
Because where'd he go?
The people were looking for David. He's just like, listen, guy, hello? I'm only one man. Please help me.
One man, one band. What we doing? Like,
please help me. But in the Bible, those are the examples of grief.
Yeah.
Where they displayed the steps, or not the steps, but the stages of grief. Grief is not a sign of weak faith. As many times as I felt like my faith was weak, like do I really believe in God? Like I was questioning my salvation. Like I was questioning if I was really saved or whatever.
Now, was this because you were grieving, or?
Yeah, because I was feeling all the emotions, all the stages of grief. I was angry. I was depressed. I was like, well, the situation I didn't trust God with, number one. And I didn't want to be near God. I didn't want to touch a Bible. I didn't want to pray. Like I didn't pray for a long time. And I was just thinking, like, am I really saved? Am I losing it right now?
This is where relationship and religion, to me, separate, right? Because if you have a relationship with God, You go through stuff in your relationship,
Yeah.
period. So of course you're gonna go through something with your relationship with God. It doesn't mean you don't love Him. It doesn't mean you don't believe Him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't mean that you know your salvation is not secure. You're just going through a rough patch in your
Exactly.
relationship,
And it's
and
a part of the human existence.
yeah,
Where
and
you,
it's just like any relationship, you go through a rough patch and you grow from it if you do the work that you're supposed to
if you
do.
do the work, that's
Now, if you
good.
don't do the work, then of course, like it's just like, well, what are we doing with this relationship?
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, God, I'm frustrated with you. I don't want to do what you want me to do, but at the same time, I have to eventually surrender because deep down inside, I know that I love you, and you
Yeah.
love me more than I love you.
Yeah. Grief is not a sign of weak faith.
Mm-mm.
It's something that we go through.
It's actually, I feel like if I had to say, it would be a sign of strong faith because you're facing it. And I feel like without knowing it, even though we're mad, we're still trusting God to get us through
Mm-hmm.
the situation. So I would never say it was weak faith, but it's definitely like it tries your faith
It
for
does.
sure.
Absolutely. That's the
But
testing of faith.
yeah, at the end of it all, your faith is stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Your relationship with Him is stronger. Like, I feel like when I was going through that, coming back to God, I seeked Him more.
Mm.
I spent more time with Him because it's just like, I really need your direction. I can't navigate life through that like this. Like I can't do it on my own. These feelings that I'm feeling, you gave me emotions. So now what are we doing?
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that you sought God more after everything,
Mm-hmm.
after you dealt with everything, because it grief, it also illuminates how we are human and
Mm-hmm.
we don't have any power over our own lives or over how this life goes.
Yeah.
It's a lot that we can say about how hard it is because it literally is hard. I just feel like that shows us how much more we need God,
Mm-hmm.
because He knows all, He sees all.
Mm-hmm. And He wants us to need Him. He wants us to rely on Him.
Mm-hmm.
He wants us before we do anything, hey God, like, how do you feel about this?
Mm-hmm.
Is this the right choice? Like, should I take this job? Should I not take this job? Should I go to this therapist? Should I not go to
Yeah,
this therapist? Like, all of that matters.
all of it matters.
Like, He wants us to seek Him for everything.
Absolutely.
So I feel like sometimes He has to put us in situations where the ending is us seeking Him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always comfortable situations.
Going back to John 11:35 about
Mm-hmm.
when Jesus was grieving the death of Lazarus, it says that Jesus wept.
Mm-hmm.
John 11:35 says that Jesus wept. But if you keep reading down in verse 36, it says the people who were standing nearby said, "See how much he loved him." So grief is not, that goes back to, grief is not a sign of weak faith. It is a sign of deep love that you have for
Mm-hmm.
somebody that you lost.
Mm-hmm.
So even Jesus in his humanity, he grieved
Mm-hmm.
because
And
that's a humanistic feature
right.
that we have.
I understand. And I think it's so dope to have a God who understands.
Yes.
So He's like, I'm going to show you that I understand the hurt that you're feeling.
Yes.
But I'm also going to show you that my Father gets the glory because now He's here. So,
Yeah.
you
And that
know.
points me back to Hebrews, I think it's 4:15,
Mm-hmm.
where it says we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with us.
Mm-hmm.
Because he literally, like you just said, he feels what we feel. He's been through what we've been through,
Mm-hmm.
what we are going through. So we can come to him. That's all the more reason to seek him because
Yeah.
he knows how to navigate us through.
Yeah.
He knows how to love us through. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, oh, he's just so
You
amazing.
just feel like you really understand. Like
Yeah.
Mike and I think like I've always known that He understood and that, He came here, He dealt with all of it. But Mike and I watched The Chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And when he
So do
got,
I. So good.
oh, so good. When he received I think he received the note about Lazarus, but the way he separated himself and went up to the room showed like, I feel like that's when he started his grief. And he was just like, that's my friend. Like, we're close. We like, and now I'm about to lose him. It's kind of like finding out that somebody is in stage 4 cancer and there's nothing that you can do. I feel like that's how it relates to like God knew, and once again showed his humanity because he was sad about it.
And I think he also gives us he shows us that it's okay. It's okay for you to, you are in this human body. And even though it was not my plan for you to live in sin and feel this at all,
Yeah.
I know that you are feeling it. And I'm going to show you that it's okay for you to feel it. And I'm also going to show you that you can get through it with me.
Yeah.
He's just so dope.
Yeah. I love how he really led by example. Like
Exactly.
he really showed us like, listen, it's gonna be hard, but I got you.
I got you.
But I just need you not to turn your back on me so I can have you. Like,
So I can help you.
that's
That's
it.
good. You preaching. You is preaching, girl. God never asked us to suppress our grief. That's all in what we were just talking about. He never asks us to suppress it. He asks us to give it to him. He wants us to seek him. He wants
Yeah.
us to say, be honest with him, like, God, man, you hurt me with this one. And I can remember me saying that to him. God, you killed me with this. You took me out.
My heart, you know?
And he's like, I know, but bring it to me so that I can help you get through it. I'm not going to take it away,
Yeah.
but I'm going to help you get through it. Don't go to anything else. Don't go to anybody else. You need me.
Yeah.
And I know that you're hurting. I know that this hurt. And I love you so much that I'm going to stick it through with you. And we're going to get through this.
Yeah.
Not over it, not under it, through
But
it.
through it. And the crazy thing is, like, nothing is a surprise to God, right?
Nothing.
So he already knew all of the emotions. He already knew the things we were going to say. Like the anger we were going to feel, but he can deal with it.
He can deal with it. He can handle it.
And he's just like, I get it, but I got you. Like, feel what you're going to feel. But just know that it's okay to feel it. And I still love you. Unconditionally.
Unconditionally.
Like, and I just, like, that's one of the biggest things that I want people to understand. Like, you can go to God. He already knows. Nothing is a surprise. But he wants us to come to him and verbalize what we're going through.
Yeah. God never asks us to suppress our grief. He always asks us to bring it to him. And speaking of Job.
Job 120, I'm reading the ESV version.
Okay.
Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell on the ground and worshiped. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return to the Lord. And naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrong.
Job felt what he needed to feel. He tore his robe. So tearing your clothes, tearing your robe, or putting dust and dirt on you was a sign in those times of grief, of letting the public know, listen, I just lost something, or I'm grieving this right now. Allow me the time to do this. And Job, he made it known. But what's important to note is that, like you said, in the word, it said Job did not sin. He also recognized or acknowledged God's sovereignty, how he's Lord over life and over death. Death. That's a hard pill to swallow.
It is.
That's very hard to grasp or be okay with. Saying, God, okay, you Lord, you're sovereign. And you got this.
Yeah. And it also goes to show that we don't know God's timing.
Don't.
Like, we don't know his timing. But, like, he has every right to do what he wants to do. He has every right because we're his. So even though I might be upset that my parents are here, they were my parents, but they're not mine.
Thank you. Because I was
Like,
about to say that.
they're not mine.
Yes. He said,
So
naked I came and naked I shall return. So I'm allowing you to be sovereign. I'm acknowledging you as sovereign Lord and King and ruler. And I'm also acknowledging that what I had was not mine. You gave it to me. So you can take it away.
and
It was never mine.
I think that's sometimes that's just like the hardest thing to wrap your head around.
It
though.
is.
And it's just like, I get it, but I don't get it. Like, that's God, that's crazy. Like, but at the same time, you're still God.
You're still God, and I can't do nothing about it.
No, because it. What I'm gonna do? Go? How I'm gonna bring him back?
Shut up.
God, we gotta bargain. What else can I give you? Can I give you the
Yeah.
dog? You don't want him? No. Okay.
Sometimes what we're going through can blind us from God's presence and seeing that God is actually with us. But
I can't stay here forever. Like, I can't use my grief as a crutch.
does grief have a limit?
So if you allow yourself to enjoy what God is blessing you with, that doesn't mean that you ignore or you can't deal with the grief that you're dealing with.
Yeah.